Patrick.
Hey, Michael J.
Wow, man. Clan Ironworks. We barely knew you.
Well, I don't know. Is that fair to say? I mean, we knew you for like 17 years. Like, I realized KCI was like a late bloomer.
Yeah.
But, like, the people predicted that when that card first came out, there were people who said this card's going to get banned. And over a long enough view,
They were right.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I feel like cheating, but was it Manuel Bavand who made top 8 of a Worlds with KCI, like back in the day when it first came out?
Could be.
But yeah, so I think it had a life before its more recent Matt Nass enabled life. But yeah, recently not as fun for the opponents, KCI.
Now, but what's even more fun is Ravnica Allegiance, maybe. Like Ravnica Allegiance, a lot of cards still that we haven't even began to touch on. And, the new format is upon us. This weekend, we're going to start seeing moving and shaking.
It is happening.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of cards getting a lot of buzz. Like, for instance, what do you think of, Red Draw 2?
So that's on my list of like 3 Ravnica Allegiance cards I really wanted to talk about. Red Draw 2, a.k.a. Light Up the Stage, is on fire. It is on fire in the standard format. People in the best of 1 queues of Magic Arena are lighting up the stage like crazy, and it is quite the splash card in Modern already. I mean, not splash card, like making a splash card. I mean, it's 4 of in the 75s all over the place, and I would just like to point out that there's a new trend in these red burn decks for Modern, away from the powerful cards towards the 1 casting cost cards, and both Red Draw 2 and Riftbolt 2K19 are very much making their ways into both the standard and Modern versions.
Yeah, it seems like Skewer the Critics and Light Up the Stage just seem like if you snap off a playset of both of those in your red deck, you're doing some things.
Yeah, I mean, all the rules are going to be new in Modern. I think this weekend there's going to be a Modern Pro Tour Mythic Championship qualifier, whatever they call it, this weekend at Grand Prix New Jersey on Saturday. I think I'm going to play that in the Grand Prix itself. And my prediction is that Red is going to be storming to the top of the popularity lists in Modern, in part because KCI is creating a vacuum, right? And, those guys got to go somewhere.
Well, what about Electro Dominance, man? If you just Electro Dominance in order to be able to play things like, Restore Balance for free, there's got to be something there. I'm not saying that it's going to be like popular or like figured out the gate, but that's another Modern angle that seems like we got to take a look at it, right? Like, isn't Electro Dominance just such a sick enabler for those no cost cards?
Unbelievably strong. I agree. My only caveat is this is literally the first Modern, it's not even a big turn. It's not even a Grand Prix. It's a PTQ. But with the new format, we just got the announcement that Clan Ironworks was going to be banned 2 days ago. So at the point that the tournament it happens, it's going to be less than a full week. And then separately, this is the first weekend, 125 is the official release date of Ravnica Allegiance. So nobody's going to have had the ability to tune a deck like that yet, and I mean, I'm sure that Electro Dominance is going to have a long and storied career in Modern, unless it gets itself banned, the way KCI just did. But not yet. I think, like, people are going to say, how do I shore up in the stuff that I understand? How are the incentives among the cards that people are already playing shift? I'll just give you the easiest signal from me, as someone who's played red-white burn decks for a couple of years. I have not had a core Firewalker in my sideboard in I don't know how long. But I think that Core Firewalker is a big comeback card for two reasons. One of them is I do think that Light Up the Stage and Skewer the Critics are going to impact the percentage of red decks that are played in the tournament, along with, obviously, the banning of KCI. But separately, Core Firewalker is like an insane lockdown beater against Arclight Phoenix decks. If you just can deal with their thing in the ice, they can't remove it, and you constantly gain life, so it's impossible for them to race. So you pivot this matchup in sideboarded games. We're just like, all right, take care of your one blue threat, and now it's problems for you. You can't block him, and not all your cantrips, but many of your enabler cards are feeding me in the race.
I mean, I believe it. I still just want to restore balance, people. I mean, I guess, in the meantime, this anti-burn plan sounds all right, though. Because there's going to be a lot of other burn decks at the tournament. Yeah. Have you been looking at Standard much, though? Because I think Light Up the Stage is going to be excellent in Standard, too.
Oh, fully agree. I've seen a lot of lists that are 20 mountains, so coming down from the 22 mountains with Experimental Frenzy and Rekindling Phoenix, just going down to straight 20 mountains, super lean decks with 4 Light Up the Stage and 4 Skewer the Critics. And I saw an insane deck today that had no Goblin Chain Whirlers, that's too crazy for me. Color me too crazy for no Chain Whirlers in mono red. But I think that Light Up the Stage is going to be awesome, and there's probably at least 3 styles of red aggro that can, or red mid-range decks that can play it. And it seems like a great sideboard card. It seems like a great way for you to go, like if you're going to play an attrition type game, or up against a mid-range deck in the mid game after sideboarding, and a way to fight the card advantage of control decks. Like you get your early oomph. They deal with your first flurry. You got a little front side of the draw too, like they've got, but it only costs 1.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of that Abbott type of deal, right? Like where you're getting just a little bit of extra card flow, just in the course of your being aggressive to start with. I'm wondering if you can play what is this Rakdos deck that we're gonna play that has 4 Light Up the Stage, 4 Skewer the Critic, maybe Rick's Mahdi Reveler, and then maybe the new Phyrexian Arena, the Theater of Horrors.
Yeah.
Like what's this aggressive deck look like? Because you might actually just really pick apart some kind of a deck trying to play controlling or mid-rangey because of how much you can just keep pace with them on the cards, but you're just continuing to hit them for damage.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to just kind of brew that out loud a little bit. I've been thinking about that kind of a deck, and my main just kind of center of the deck is let's start with the shell of the red aggro deck from the previous Standard format, and then just kind of swap in the Experimental Frenzy slot, swap in Theater of Horrors, and then think about what other Rakdos cards we might want to have in the main deck while still remaining mostly red.
Why start there? I mean, don't you, why not look at what all? I mean, we can if you want. I just wonder why. Aren't there a number of black cards we'd want to consider before figuring out how slanted to be, or are you just that in on Chain Whirler that it's just a foregone conclusion?
Yeah, so for me, I think that there's a fork that you have. Like, for example, there's other powerful creatures in the format that you could potentially play in Rakdos, right? Like Rakdos Firewheeler is a really good example, or Judith. But if you're going to go in certain of these directions and have, like, a serious dedication to black, like you can presumably hit double black for Rakdos Firewheeler, for example, you can't really play Goblin Chain Whirler. So if you're going to go in that direction, I think you got to go. You got to do 2 things. First one is you got to give up Chain Whirler. The second thing is you probably have to play more lands. So the shells that are like 20 to 22 lands, you actually have to up your land count to 24, maybe even 25 to support the colors, I think.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. That could be. It could be. I mean, there's a few ways you could do it, though, right? Like, for instance, what if you end up with a little bit of treasure in your deck?
So you want to think about like starting with a more mid-range deck with.
No. I just want to look at what all the new cards are that might be worthy of inclusion before picking colors. Just evaluate, like, if mana was no object, what are all the things that would be attractive?
Oh.
And then, you know what I mean? Like, in terms of, like, let's take a look at, is there some new enticement that's, like, we go to all this trouble and we make our mana base all Goblin Chain War, and then we realize, actually, there's just no way we're not going to play this BB card.
Yeah, that's a challenge. Like cards like Bedevil are just better than any of the cards in the mono red deck.
Maybe.
You just have to pay the deck building price, though.
So, Bedevil's one card, but, like, I could imagine us living without Bedevil. It's really good, though. Like, it's a draw. What do you think of Drill Bit? You know, the target player reveals their hand, you choose a non-lane card from it, and they discard it. But it's spectacles for a black, so you get coercion, right? Like a non-lane coercion. But if you if you made your opponent lose any life this turn, you get a Thoughtseize that doesn't take any damage from you.
Yeah, so there's good incentives to Drill Bit. The fail state of Drill Bit isn't that bad, right? So coercion, granted it was block, was able to at least finals a Pro Tour once. I think that the spectacle is it's fine. I don't know. You think this is a main deck card?
Maybe. I don't know. It depends on the rest of the deck. I could imagine it. It depends on, because, like, I think you got to do something. You can't just, like, you're not going to be fast enough to, like, race a Wilderness Reclamation deck. Like, I don't know. It doesn't have to be this. It could be a lot of other things instead. But, like, I don't know. This card looks all right to me. It depends on how many one-drops you're playing.
So I kind of...
Here's a better... Oh, go ahead, yeah.
Well, I like this card as a redundancy. So one of the thoughts that I had for initial deck build for Standard was just based on your witnessing, my friend, of Basilica Bellhaunt last week. I was just like, actually, this card is way, way better than I thought it was. And I just kind of riffed on that a lot. But if you're playing like a mid-range-ish black-white creature deck, you are definitely meat to Wilderness Reclamation in Game 1. So you got to go heavy on the hand destruction and then, you know, key permanence destruction, whether that's Mortify or Vraska's Contempt type cards, depending on, you know, what key permanence somebody's going to have other than Wilderness Reclamation, in order to be competitive with them, along probably with some other way to get ahead, like treasure maps or something like that. And a Squell is for duress enough. Maybe some drill bits in addition to duress would be useful in that kind of a sideboard structure, especially if you know you're going to have some creatures to enable it, even if they're not turn 1.
I mean, it could, but, like, I think that this card becomes actively great if you're playing, like, say, a zombie deck that has a lot of one-drops. Like, why not?
Like, great as in main deckable great, or great as in sideboard?
Yeah, it could be. If I could imagine decks, if you just had, like, say you have, like, 4 Gutterbones and 4 Deergraph Ghoul, right? Like, if you just had a bunch of, if you were just, like, very reliably playing one-drops, I could imagine you just playing drill bits. Like, I could imagine you playing 4. I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily going to be the right format for it, but it easily could be.
Oh, it's certainly not crazy.
Yeah, because I don't know. This card doesn't look too bad to me. This card looks pretty good. Doesn't look great. Looks fine. But, like, I could imagine the seal. Like, there are some worlds where this card is, like, instrumental.
Yeah. Actually, you mentioned the card, though. Let's talk about Gutterbones for a second, and then we can talk about Gutterbones more, or, you know, which color we want to lean in for our arena, or back to drill bit. But I think Gutterbones is worth a mention. Gutterbones is B for a 2/1 skeleton warrior, and it comes into play tapped, but it has another ability, which is one to be return Gutterbones from your graveyard to your hand. Activate this ability only during your turn and only if an opponent lost life this turn. Just a little bit of a different kind of angle to the one casting cost rebuy cards for black creatures. And obviously there's many that have had some version of this. I think this is pretty cool because Gutterbones also enables, like, card drawing engines other than stuff that is just based on creature combat. Like, you could use this to jumpstart or something.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of things you could do with this. Obviously, looting it away or whatever, you get a little bit of value there. But I think this guy, just as an enabler for your spectacles, is going to be big. I mean, I think this card looks so much – this card looks excellent to me. I could imagine playing this in a mid-range or big deck You know, like it's like a scrappy scrounger, but it really does block.
So when you say like an enabler for your spectacles, you mean like you play first turn Blood Crypt, ouch, I'm on 18, land the Gutter Bones, turn 2 in there. I could just immediately play the one casting cost version of Light Up the Stage with the red side of my Blood Crypt, and then or skewer some critics, or bite down on some drills, any of that stuff on turn 2.
I don't even just mean. I mean, you could do it on turn 2, but it's not just about turn 2. I just think there's a lot of attractive cards for Rakdos to be a little bigger, but strategically, there's a lot of reason to want to be lower. And I think there are some decks I can imagine where you want to try to get best of both worlds, where you're trying to be a little bit bigger, but you just want to make some plays early, kind of like how people have used the Soulscar Mage. People have used Soulscar Mage in a much bigger deck before because it's got enough applications. I can imagine Gutterbones being a part of a much bigger deck, and part of that is just the combo of Gutterbones turning on some of your spectacle cards. Like there's a few different ones, like even just like, and I don't know that it would come to this, but like, what if you're playing Spawn of Mayhem? Right? Like you could just, I don't know, like want to power it up. Or what if you want to just have ways to power up your Theater of Horrors? Like he's
a 2-power creature for 1 mana. There's a long tradition of those guys being competitive, and this is one that people don't want to trade with, right? Like it's, unless you're going to trade a Lava Coil with it, right? Like if you just put your guy in front of the Gutter Bones, then you're going to be on the wrong side of it at some point.
Yeah, I think Gutterbones it's just a very efficient card, and it's going to be tough for most people to interact with profitably. Right, like even when somebody Lava Coils it, it's not like they did anything, right? Like you still got the best of them.
Oh yeah. First of all, it's only a 1-for-1, that's basically the dream of most beatdown creatures. Like with beatdown creatures, like in grade school, they're like, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I want to trade 1-for-1 with a removal spell. That's
a removal spell that costs a mana more. Even
like a removal spell that was twice my casting cost. And by the way, they now don't have this for my X, whatever their teammate was that has 4 toughness.
Spawn of Mayhem or whatever.
Some awesome. Spawn of Mayhem is also awesome, in part because it enables future spectacles so efficiently.
Yeah. There's a lot to like with Spawn of Mayhem if you can enable it and you're willing to just play that much black, which is part of the reason why I wanted to at least take a look to see what it looks like, Like, there's a lot more options, and Goblin Chain Whirler sets a high bar. But, it seems like there's at least something to consider there.
Oh, I mean, this guy, a 4/4 flying trample for only 3 mana, that turns all your future Theater of Horrors on, et cetera, that's pretty good, actually. Right? Talk about somebody who you really want to Lava Coil.
And then there's also Awaken the Erstwild. Like, so 3 black, each player discards all the cards in their hand, then creates that many 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. Like, this is kind of an interesting mind twist, right?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. And, like, I feel like this card can go the wrong way on you sometimes. Right, like, you need to have cards in hand for it to be good for your side. But, I mean, you're saying that for 5 you just want to twist them and live with the fact that they just have, like, 10 power in play now?
Well, you have however many cards you had. They have however many cards they had. And they all kind of cancel out. So as long as whatever your board is a board that makes a ton of 2/2s attacking into you not profitable, right? Like, you can just be ahead on board, right? Like, what if your permanents involve creatures that outclass 2/2s and have text boxes that gain advantage over time, and so that because you have no cards in hand and they have no cards in hand, the game's going to stretch for a bit because the game's locked up because you got some 2/2s, they got more 2/2s, but you have a board that can actually keep things locked up, and you're progressing the game plan because of whatever your cards' text boxes are.
Or you could actually just have, like, an Ethereal Absolution, right, where you have 3/3s and they have 1/1s, right? Like, that's...
But, I mean, yeah, or you just have Profane Procession because it's turn 5. Like, let's say you just you played a Profane Procession, and on turn 2 and turn 4, you played some cards that are good at defending, and now this is the new normal.
Oh, is that you're game's in lockdown mode now, right?
Right. Plus, depending on what you're playing against, I think there's going to be some decks that when you just Mind Twist them and they have a bunch of 2/2s, the 2/2s don't do anything. Like, if you're playing against some deck that has like a variety of different, say your deck, like, you do this and then now your opponent's drawing combo pieces, synergy cards, counterspell, Wilderness Reclamation, or like whatever they're drawing, right? Like they draw a card that ramp, like some kind of a mana ramp card or a Llanowar Elf. I mean, it's not like everybody's draws are all just better than 2/2s anyway.
Yeah, this is like a really democratizing card, right? Like, let's reduce every piece of cardboard to grizzly bears. But
it's not. It's only the things that come later. It gives you a huge reward for having done stuff now. Like, whatever you did now that's better than a grizzly bear is great.
Yeah.
You seem skeptical. I think, at the very least, this has got to be a sideboard card against unfair decks.
I think this card is a kind of very interesting Mind Twist. I agree with that statement a lot. My skepticism comes from a combination of its 5 casting costness, which if you're going to get a big Mind Twist isn't an unreasonable amount of mana to pay. But also, like, I just hate it when my stuff backfires.
Why? You get to choose whether you play it or not.
Yeah, but I can't choose whether or not I drew it. Right?
Yeah, but you could do something else.
Whether or not I put it in my deck. Like, I mean, yes, I agree that there's definitely some top side on this that will be game winning. I might be wrong. It took me a second to absorb how right you were about Bell Hunt, but you were very right on that one. Like, I'm inspired by Basilica Bell Hunt. That's one of my favorite cards to build around in the new set, and I had just not even thought about it before we had our chat last week.
So what do you think of Pestilent Spirit? This one's a little fancy. But, like, if you have a Pestilent Spirit in play and your opponent has a board full of 2/2s, any sorceries or instants you draw that deal 1 damage to every enemy is going to be pretty good.
Yeah, it's really cool flavor-wise, right? Right, so it has menace. So it's a 3/2 rare creature for 3 mana for 2 and a B. It's a spirit that has both menace and death touch. Right, so it's kind of... It starts off with like a little bit of that Lure Thicket Basilisk thing from back when I started playing, right? Like, if you're going to block this thing, it's bad for the blockers, but in this case, you have to block with multiples, right? It starts...
It's not really, yeah, but you don't have to block. You could just take 3 a turn.
3. Yeah, but the thing that's awesome about this is you're right, like, every gut shot takes down Niv Mizzet with this thing in play.
Well, it's not even just about the gut shots, right? Like, there's plenty of cards that this works super naturally well with, like Carnival Carnage. Right? Like, isn't it just awesome being able to turn your Carnival Carnage into a one mana kill spell?
Yeah, I mean, like, you're paying the cost of playing the Pestilent Spirit. That's the thing. I mean,
yeah, but it's still. How is that even a big cost? It's a 3/2 that's like hard to block. It's not like it's the worst, right? And it trades with stuff. As long as you just put it down and immediately FTK something.
I mean, okay, I don't know. Like, I think it's. I'm a little skeptical. I think a 3 mana for a creature in Standard has not the highest bar, but a decent sized bar. So this thing is obviously very good at making your next 3 things much better than they might have been otherwise. But, like, its competition has been somewhere between Goblin Chain Whirler, Judith, and Jade Light Ranger, right? Like, am I looking at this wrong? I mean, I'm all for a Carnival Carnage. I'm in for both sides of that card. So anything that makes that card even better, I'm excited. But its competition is so good at 3. And then if you have
right.
FTK immediately, you need 4.
Yeah. And I do. But I kind of view it as more of a 4-drop anyway. In terms of clearing the board, there are some other new angles. I mean, what about just going Gates? Gates Ablaze.
Ooh.
2 and a red sorcery. Gates Ablaze deals X damage to each creature, where X is the number of gates you control.
Yeah, I've heard really good things about this card in limited play, and I can imagine this card being very effective in a deck that's willing to play some gates. Right, so, there have been some decks in Standards past, and even in just the Standard that we're just transitioning out of right now, that have played 2 or more gates. My main questions are, if this is to be any level of decent, you got to have 2 gates, right? For this to be competitive with Deafening Clarion, granted, not necessarily in white, you got to have 3 gates. But then after that, this thing is like, Hour of Devastation or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, this card seems like it's a pretty good draw to actually play gates, right? Like the Guild Pact one is still like, that's the gold standard. But this is like a legit reason to be playing gates to go alongside that.
So Brad Nelson's Boros deck at the previous Grand Prix New Jersey played 3 Boros Guild Gates in the main deck. And for like a deck other than a deck that's like actively ramping into gates, that's the most that I've seen recently. But I could totally plausibly see 2-color decks, especially ones that don't have a lot of 1-drops, be happy to play 4 or more gates. But I think after 4 gates, I'm starting to look sideways eyes at the mana base. How many gates do you want to play? Now, I know the rule. I know the rule from you. I want 14 untapped lands. That's where I start in my head, right? But, at some point, I have too many gates.
I mean, I think 41 is too many. Maybe, I guess that's not true. 45 is true. You can play a lot. Well, I don't know if you even. Yeah, I guess I don't know. Like, it feels like you want to play at least the circuitous route, Guild Summit, and the sweeper, Gates Ablaze. And so, like, once you're playing Teamer, I mean,
like, does the
12? I don't know.
Does the Naya deck even consider this because it's competition with the white removal cards, including Deafening Clarion? Is it even on the list?
No, I think you have to be like for real doing it, or not playing a combination that already has something so nice as Deafening Clarion.
Yeah, I agree. So, I think. I mean, after you've cast the first Deafening Clarion, I think that the cost of playing gates gets very low because you're already ahead, so going slightly behind isn't that big a deal. But like before, like, it's the worst if your 4th land is a gate. That's the thing that I'm a little concerned about.
Nah, because that's when you drop the sweeper and you sweep for 4.
Yeah, that is a different look at it.
All right, here's top 10 card in the set. Probably top 5. This card's top 5. Growth Chamber Guardian, the new Squadron Hawk. 1 and a green, 2/2. That has adapt 2 and a green to get +2/+2. And whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on Growth Chamber Guardian, you may search your library for a card named Growth Chamber Guardian, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your library.
I mean, this card is so potentially good by itself, and then it gets really cleverly good with when combined with some other stuff, right? Like, ability to put a +1/+1 counter on this without using its own adaptability, for example. So you can kind of trigger that ability when you don't have 5 handy is cool. And then there's some, if you're playing with certain other creatures like that allow you to adapt even if you have +1/+1 counters on your creature already, you can do some wild stuff with this guy But yeah, I don't know. It's like a Kabu Titan that you don't ever have to make the decision. You remember Kabu Titan?
Yeah, of course.
You played it as a 2-drop for curve. You played it as a 5-drop for like bad blastoderm duty. But this one, always you can have both if you want it.
You can have both, but you also have the whole Squadron Hawk thing where you have all of it all the time. Like you keep chaining them together. They're each 2/2s that draw you a card, and like the card you draw is a card that draws a card.
Yeah, at least
right,
one card, right? Like you can get multiple sometimes.
Like, and you get to break it up into installments. I don't know. This card just looks excellent to me. Like, I think we're going to see this in everything from control deck sideboards, main deck. It's a big threat. It's part of decks that are all creatures. It's part of decks that only have 8 creatures. I don't know. This card just looks fantastic to me.
Yeah, one of the things I like so much about this card is that it solves the flood problem. So, like, sometimes, you're playing a green creature deck and maybe you played some Druid of the Kells or some Llanowar Elves or whatever, and you just got, like, a bunch of extra mana. You draw one Growth Chamber Guardian, all of a sudden you got plenty to do with that mana, and the stuff that you're doing is pretty good, right? Separately, because it's like a card advantage engine by itself, it does a really good job of like kind of playing that old, it used to be called blue-green, but like that old Simic plan of just, I'm going to play like one enabler guy and one pretty big guy, and I'm going to make you beat them. And I'm just going to kind of stockpile with my other resources until after you've beaten them. And then you already have reload stuff because this guy gave you the reload already.
Yeah, I mean, and just that he's doing it all so efficiently really adds up. Right, like, I mean, that's a big part of it is that you can, like, when you save a mana on, if you're doing something like a mana cheaper than normal, well, when that thing is recursive, like this, if you're getting a mana the best of it, it's multiplied by 4. So,
yeah.
like, this to me is like one of my favorite things to combine with Wilderness Reclamation, incidentally. I think the ability for this card to let you use, like, this card just means you've got 20 mana queued up of, like, productivity. You can spend at least 20 mana on this guy and, like, do really good things with it so that you're not wasting Wilderness Reclamation mana. And I think that that's going to be one of the keys with Wilderness Reclamation is finding ways to spend huge amounts of mana profitably with cards that work really well if you don't have huge amounts of mana.
Oh, that is really insightful.
Because, like, obviously everything sounds good when you just have, like, hey, it's Christmas, I have twice as much mana for no reason, right? Like, everything is super good there. But the key is going to be how good of cards can you play that let you both capitalize on the boom and work well during the bust.
Yeah, I think. I think if you focus on your thoughts on that kind of a mode of thinking, you're going to win a lot more games than somebody who is just relying on the sheer power of some of these cards, which is still probably a pretty good winning game plan.
Sure. That's it. I think that's going to end up being the key because I still think, Wilderness Reclamation to me looks like a giant mistake, and I think it's going to fall apart. I think the key is going to be people figuring out the right combination of. Let's put it this way: it's going to be. The more I think about it, the more I think that some sort of a Stoneforge Mystic Callblade deck is the thing, where you're playing like 8 creatures, like you're playing 4 Growth Chamber Guardians and like 4 other creatures, whether it's Frilled Mystic or some other thing, and then you're playing like a mix of you got some cheap interaction. Some card draw that scales, maybe Expansion Explosion, Wilderness Reclamation, or maybe some other just combinations of good cards that just have ways to spend your mana. Or maybe you're playing an Obzon deck and you're just playing with like Profane Procession, Ethereal Absolution, Treasure Map, I don't know. And then like your creatures are just like Archangels and Basilicas or something. I don't know. Or Growth Chamber. You kind of want Growth Chamber Guardian there, too. So maybe you just have Growth Chamber Guardian, Basilica, and Archangel or something. I don't know.
Oh, man. That was... just this idea of like an 8-pack creature deck with 4 Frilled Mystic and 4 Growth Chamber Guardian seems so sexy to me. That's very, very Callblade.
And then you can just play like You're probably gonna want some cheap. I don't know. You might want a little bit of cheap library manipulation, a little bit of cheap interaction. Syncopate seems great with Wilderness Reclamation. I think Expansion Explosion, the ceiling is just so high, so you make that be sort of your conceit to your concession to the archetype. But if you don't want to play red, you could also just do it with like blue, green, black, or blue, green, white. Either way, there's stuff you can be doing. You just got to make sure you have ways to spend your mana. And I think that it's going to be surprising to people just how much 8 creatures or 10 creatures or whatever, how far of a distance those go when your deck is, like instead of Preordain, you have Opt, and instead of Jace, you've got some other planes, whether you have Teferi or Karn or somebody, I don't know. Or you're drawing cards off of Expansion Explosion or Chemist's Insight or whatever. But I think your deck is just going to start working in such high gear. You're not going to be want for ways to win the game,
What do you think about Gaia's Blessing in one of these decks? Now, Gaia's Blessing is a card.
Fancy.
So let me make an argument for this. So Gaia's Blessing was like a very, very powerful endgame card, 20 years ago, right? Or
Nope. It wasn't it was a playable one. I would not say that it was very powerful.
Well, some real good men were winning some important standard matches with that card in their deck. The reason I think that this card might be good again is because your Growth Chamber Guardian has an upper limit of +3, unless you're putting more back into your library. Whether they're going from play to graveyard back into your library or some other way into the graveyard back into your library, doesn't matter. But that's a potential thing because things get into your graveyard sometimes. But one of the things that I'm interpreting with kind of the blue Wilderness Reclamation decks is just how good long game Search for Escanta is going to be, because it's a land when it's flipped, and so you got to give that extra action with Wilderness Reclamation. And one of the low creature count creatures that I would want to consider playing is Hydroid Crisis, because you can just tap out for whatever you want to do with Hydroid Crisis on your own turn with Wilderness Reclamation in play. Land still untaps, whether they countered it or not, you still get the X effects. But, if he's in the graveyard because somebody countered him or killed him with a Mortifier, well, probably not a Mortify, killed him somehow, you're a low creature deck. So getting him back somewhere in your library might be beneficial to you. So I'm thinking...
I don't know, man.
Guys...
You're telling me... dude, you're telling me... I mean, maybe. It just sure sounds to me like if your deck just has 4 Expansion Explosion and 4 Wilderness Reclamation, it's not like the extra staying power going super long is the thing. Like, I don't know, maybe if you're not playing red, like let's say your deck ends up being you're playing a different kind of Wilderness Reclamation deck, like maybe you're playing Search for Escanta Wilderness Reclamation, but then instead of red, your third color is black or something. Maybe you want more staying power going long. I just don't believe that you're really going to run out. And the thing you need on turn 27 is like access to 3 more 4/4s.
So I was thinking this might be completely implausible, right? But I was thinking maybe there's a paradigm of gameplay that's a lot like some of the way that blue-white decks would approach Fires decks like 19 years ago, which is like, all right, you have Fires. And we're just going to start there. You have Fires, and I'm not going to try to answer the Fires. I'm going to try to answer everything that comes after the Fires. So I think like there might be a paradigm that's, all right, you have Wilderness Reclamation, and that's bad. But you have a different choke point, which is one of the reasons why you're coming up with these great ideas, like about using, a Squadron Hawk strategy here to utilize some extra value. But if you actively try to fight the things that come after it, you kind of free up some interaction because you're not actively fighting the Wilderness Reclamation. And maybe that's crazy because the card's so powerful. But I think that if that's a paradigm people are approaching the format with, then there really does come to be some games where you're like, all right, we're going to play 30 turns. And Guy's Blessing is great in 30-turn games.
Yeah, I just don't believe the game's going to go to turn 30 and not be decided long before that.
Because somebody has just such a hugely insurmountable materialist.
Yeah, how are you coming back? Like, somebody's doing the will. Like, if somebody's like, if you're wilderness reclamating and it's turn 30, how did you get here without it being decided? Like, I don't know how many of the games are going to not be decided by turn 9. Like, I would guess not many.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. I feel like you're telling me about your Tolarian Academy deck, and you're like telling me about this big innovation of putting Gaia's Blessing in so that, like, on turn 30 you can, like, shuffle the strokes back in.
No, man. I'm casting Mahamodi Jin on turn 1. Like Garfield intended. Did I use that right?
Yeah.
That was the Kudio Lauer on day 1, right? Casting Mahamodi Jin on turn 1. Look what we can do with this new land, guys.
Oh, yeah. Just the way Garfield intended. All right. So what do you think, man? What are going to be what are the 3 decks you're most excited about in this upcoming weekend for Standard?
For Standard, Mono Red Super Aggro.
Mono Red or Splash Black?
Mono Red. I think Splash Black is going to get there. For this weekend, I'm saying Mono Red, like Super Aggro Mono Red. Maybe the Flame of Keld somewhere in the 75 even. Because I don't think that, like, the kind of nickel and diamond kind of Mono Red decks are going to have a prayer against Wilderness Reclamation. And I think that everybody's going to walk into the tournament who's willing to play Mountains knowing that, right? So that's.
Are the fast decks going to be able to beat somebody playing Kaya's Wrath and the Basilica?
So that's my second deck of 3. Orzhov Midrange, that kind of transforms into kind of anti-combo, anti-control after sideboarding. So, like, lots of discard, lots of maps, lots of removal after sideboard. Main deck kind of take on all comers, pretty good mid-range offensive threats, good high-end cards. That's the second deck that I'm excited about. And then the third one's got to be blue-green taking turns.
Interesting. So for me, I'm on Temur Callblade with Wilderness Reclamation, and then Orzhov Splash Wilderness Reclamation, and maybe Growth Chamber Guardian. You play some other random cards too, but like I want to try Orzhov with the Wilderness Reclamation engine there, powering Profane Procession and Ethereal Absolution and so on. I'm not excited about it, but in my heart of hearts, I think that you are exactly right, and that super duper duper fast Mono Red is going to do really well. Is going to be a good choice for this weekend.
Yeah, like no puttering around. Like
break the fastest you can be.
Like, their blood is on your chin, Mono Red. Like, that's the way that it's got to go this week. Because
this week,
like, I mean, who knows 3 weeks from now when the format starts to solidify? But right now, untuned decks, it's week 1. Go for the throat, which is a black card, but
you know what
in the Mono Red way.
You know what deck I bet people are into that falls flat at first? Riot. The super duper Riot Frenzy. All your guys have Riot. Like the Fires of Yavimaya style stuff that people are into. Everybody seems to be wanting to just jam the new Fires of Yavimaya, Rhythm of the Wild. Yep. And I think the card is fantastic, but I bet the first versions people play are going to turn out to be too slow against Mono Red and effortlessly slayed by Orzhov decks. And Wilderness Reclamation is just so powerful. Oh, so I bet the rhythm. I bet Gen 1 Rhythm of the Wild decks are going to disappoint some people who are so sure they're so good.
I think that Rhythm of the Wild is going to make some noise before the format turns again. I completely agree with you. But right now, I'm having a hard time imagining a deck that Wilderness Reclamation with blue would want to play against more than like a ramp creature deck. Right? Like, just like, let me tell you about the 5/5 I'm about to haste in. Right?
Dude, Orzhov just seems so well positioned with the stuff people are talking about at first,
Oh, I think if I had to pick one if I were to play Standard this week and I had all the cards already, I would go Orzhov to start. I think like that one is it's hard to get that one wrong. The cards are all really good. You can pick, 40 different Orzhov cards that are completely different from 40 different Orzhov cards somebody else picks, and you're both going to have pretty good stacks of black and white cards, on completely different themes. Like, I'm Knights, I'm Angels, I'm Removal, and they're all pretty good. Like, you got to play Mortify, though. You got to play Mortify, I think.
I think so, because I'm still at you got to play Wilderness Reclamation.
I honest to God, List Shrine, didn't think about playing Wilderness Reclamation in Orzhov, but the more I think about it, the more Siege Rhinos I remember being great. So that's probably a thing. But yeah, in my heart of hearts, Blood, Red, get in there with some Goblin Chain Whirler and Runaway Steamkin and cross your fingers, and probably you're going to get the least things wrong.
All right. Well, awesome. See you next week, man. Good luck.
Thanks. Bye.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play Dredge, so jailer hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind. Had to find a way not to lose my mind. Trapped in a vault with nothing but time. Parents and my friends were the key to find. Magic gave me purpose and drive. The game, the love, it kept me alive. Visions of better weather, light